Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran and today's video is gonna be slightly different. I like to do the best of classes from time to time, especially with brand new patch updates. And in this video I want to try something different. Best current DPS to play, the strongest DPS classes for patch 8.1. I get a lot of questions asking me, hey Dalaran, what are the best current DPS classes in the game right now? What can I play right now that will get me invited to groups if I play some of these classes? So in this video, this is exactly what we're going to showcase you, the current best DPS classes that you can play right now in BFA. Now, there is some prefixes to this video. First of all, this video is only as valid as long as we are in patch 8.1. And it doesn't look like 8.15 has too many other class changes on the horizon. So you can count 8.15 as a valid option for this video. Also, the meta for these classes is going to change depending on what environment we are in right now. The two sources we got to take a look at where classes are performing really well at are going to be the raids, which is the current raid Battle for Dalaran lore, as well as Mythic Plus Dungeons Season 2 Reaping Affix. We are going to be playing with numbers and graphs. We are actually going to be using a lot of the data from WoW logs as well as Raider.io to show you guys the most optimal best classes that are currently played and selected right now within Battle for Azeroth PvE side of the content. So I do hope you guys enjoy this video. Let's get into it. The first class is going to be Warlock. Primarily Demonology, Affliction, and Destruction, all three specs have a value somewhere in current system of Battle for Azeroth. Warlocks have rose to fame out of nowhere with the new raid, as there's a lot of mechanics where you have to multi-dot and cleave enemies that are far apart from one another. Where a melee class, for example, just can't quite reach them, but a caster like Affliction with all of your deliberating dots, or Destruction with Havoc, double-splitting Chaos Bolts, cleaving targets down, or even something like Demonology, overtaking the Warlock specs by storm in pure AoE damage. Warlocks are in one of the top classes right now that are chosen for most scenarios. So you have three different specs with three different values of play. Affliction is going to be dot damage that can be spread around on multiple enemies. The more enemies enter the scene and the further apart they are, the more damage an Affliction Warlock can muster altogether. By leaving enemies dotted up, especially if they survive for a long time, Affliction has that slow, rotting damage that persists as the fight goes on. Then you have Destruction with its punchy damage with Chaos Bolts, Havoc to split the damage where you can cleave two separate targets with a massive Chaos Bolt, splitting damage to a bunch of enemies, bursting them down, and making sure to have everybody dotted with a powerful Immolate. My favorite though is Demonology Warlock with a brand new trait that allows you on 3 imps that are sacrificed by implosion to grant you a lot of haste. With that trait, if you stack it 3 times, sacrifice the 3 imps basically activates Bloodlust for the Warlock, so you can spend all your stats into Versatility, Critical Strike, and Mastery since you'll get the haste from your imps. It offers a fun playstyle that's fairly easy to manage, and it comes with massive AoE damage with all of your talents and varieties of play. Powerful damage that is useful in both raids, as well as the new season for Mythic Plus Dungeons, with Reaping Affix offering a lot of adds for you to blow up. Outside of damage, Warlocks come with a Hellstone, which can be used for a party member to save themselves with a self-heal, Soulstone to B-res allies, Warlock Gateway in order to help your team move safely across surfaces, anyone use it to make some skips within dungeons. The Warlock, being a tanky caster with varieties of play, offers to be a great caster currently in Battle for Azeroth. Second class on the list, and of course I'm not trying to be biased here, but it is going to end up being Rogue, which is my main. You have no idea how many times I've been inside of a raid or a dungeon, and I told myself, whenever playing on an ult, that this fight or this dungeon would have been so much easier if I was playing my rogue. With ability to shroud allies, allowing your team to bypass certain powerful trash mobs, plethora of crowd control abilities from stuns to blinds to saps, generally exceptional mobility across 3 specs, and with the current raid tier, Assassination and mostly Outlaw, proven to be one of the more powerful spec options for the current PvE content progress. Assassination is still one of the better specs for pure single target damage. If there's a fight where you need an exorbitant amount of burst, Assassination is always going to be the spec. With some of the trait changes, the spec has become even more powerful, so it maintains its glory from the previous raid tier. But with the brand new fights, the mass cleave for AoE and the reaping affix for Mythic Plus, Outlaw has seen an exceptionally high amount of play as of recently, as Outlaw can dispatch multiple enemies very quickly with this burst AoE playstyle. And when the cards line up, when the moons align and you get that 5 buff burst combo, you can obliterate enemies doing up to 500k DPS. This is all in a single trash pool of reaping. Because of that, Outlaw has become a staple for most of the Mythic Plus groups, and only those that have learned how to deal with the specs and its RNG mechanics have been able to bring intense amounts of damage and numbers to groups trying to push hard content. Because of how powerful Outlaw is in its cleave situations, it doesn't have to compete with Assassination within the raiding environment. Outlaw has a fair amount of single target damage, but if it's a pure single target fight, this is where people could just swap to Assassination. But if fight has some cleave, that opens you options. You either can play Outlaw for its mass cleave capability, or you could play Assassination for its mass multi-dot playability. Both of the specs are interchangeable, and the best part is you can simply play whichever one you want, as both of them end up being very powerful in any situation. I feel like rogues are going to be powerful throughout this expansion, so if you haven't leveled one yet, I think it's a good idea to bring one up to speed. Alright, we talked a bit about melee. Back to casters, and you'll be surprised how many casters we have on this list. The next caster is going to be Druid, primarily looking at a balanced Druid. Boomkins have been exceptionally powerful and sought after in the PvE content of patch 8.1 with the release of the new raid. Their powerful multi-dot capability to dot multiple enemies from afar, while also being able to pump intense amount of single target damage. With some of the new trait changes, it helps them play around with Incarnation a lot better, making the spec very powerful in terms of pure glass cannon single target damage. You'll see a lot of the boomkins are parsing very high, and don't be surprised if one blows everybody out of the water inside of a dungeon group. When it comes to Mythic Plus dungeons, this is where you would think boomkins are actually not quite as powerful, as Blizzard decided to clip their AoE damage. You see, Starfall simply just doesn't do enough, and it's in full duration. Starfall will do about 10k worth of damage. It is not worth putting on any groups under 5 packs. But still, people will bring those feathery birds into groups, mostly for their intense amounts of utility that they bring as a caster. They're probably the best friend to a healer inside of any dungeon group. We have trees that they can spawn, which can take off the aggro from a tank. This is exceptionally useful in any of the dungeon affixes where the tank has to watch out for their own health, like Necrotic for example, or even Grievous. They can also support healers as well as tanks. With healers, they'll grant them the ability of Innervate, allowing healers to heal themselves and everybody around them without having to worry about mana for a short moment, giving healers opportunity to cast some powerful emergency heals without having to worry about falling behind. Then there is a variety of CC, from Typhoon to be able to push enemies away, Roots to be able to root enemies down in the same place. You also can cast Hibernate on certain beast enemies. They can even soothe enraged enemies. They'll also bring a Battle Res, which is that extra safety net. They could shapeshift themselves in order to get out of certain movement-based abilities and help with certain movement-based mechanics. They also have a fair amount of self-healing and healing for others in case a healer needs a little bit extra assistance. So if you're somebody who doesn't really care about doing top DPS, but you still want to provide some utility to your allies, Boomkins have all that utility and more. Which is a reason why I decided to put Boomkins on this list, because they are simply amazing. Outside of that, you also have Restoration Druids that are doing exceptionally well as one of the most sought out healers for Mythic Plus dungeons with their Restoration Hots. Guardian Druids are not that terrible as tanks, and it looks like Pharaohs are starting to come around, and I'm pretty sure that Feral Druids are going to be more sought out in the next raid tier. Next class on the list is Demon Hunter. Now, obviously Blizzard would want to keep this class very powerful. It's still a fairly fresh and new class, and some people even complain about how easy Demon Hunters are compared to some of the other classes, so class envy can be a thing. But there's a reason why Demon Hunters are a must-have in every raid, not only because they bring a powerful debuff on enemies. Any one of the attacks makes an enemy take 5% more magical damage, so you have to have a Demon Hunter in every raid. But not because of that, Demon Hunters also bring powerful AoE damage, and they can talent for even more explosive AoE. They bring exceptionally good mobility, maybe the best mobility in the game by far. They have a ranged interrupt, which allows them to interrupt certain abilities from afar, let's say from safety, which makes them invaluable in certain raid situations like the Jaina fight at the very end when she freezes the ocean, or certain Mythic Plus dungeon groups. You also have group utility with a Demon Hunter by being able to drop darkness on your allies with a slight chance to absorb some of the powerful hits that would otherwise kill your group. You also have very good crowd control as a class and variety of different playstyles. I also believe it's one of the more fun classes to play in the game in general, but not only that, they're fun while also useful. Demon Hunters have always had a spot in Mythic Plus teams as well as raids. They generally perform very well, and probably one of the better parts is because they're so easy to play, it is much easier to follow mechanics. It is much easier to do the fights if your rotation is not the most complicated ever. Even though some say that in Battle for Azeroth, none of the rotations are complicated, I would still have to say the Demon Hunter one is still the least complicated out of the bunch. But that's not a jab at Demon Hunters, no, not at all, not even especially at Lyle DH from Proudmoore Privates on Dalaran. Never would I stoop so low to include him in a video, Lyle, but Demon Hunters is one of those classes that's fairly easy to manage. You can see the fights a lot easier, and they bring all the utility and necessities needed inside of a raid. Last class on this list, and this one might be kind of up in the air. There's a lot of classes that could have taken the 5th spot, but I'm going to go with the graphs that we have of populations of how these classes are performing, and I have to go with the Shaman, primarily the Elemental Shaboy. The Elemental Shamans have gotten increasingly better with this brand new raid, falling in the same category as Boomkins and even Warlocks in a sense that they have a lot of that spread pressure dot damage that they can play around with. But they're also very similar to Boomkin because of the utility they provide. Currently, Elemental Shamans have a very fun instacast heavy playstyle which helps a lot in the movement based fights, with abilities like Ice Fury, with abilities like Stormkeeper, and with the instacast capability of Lava Burst. A lot of the Elemental Shamans can cast on the move, so they're the one caster that can get around the battlefield and still pump great damage. The spread pressure playstyle with Flame Shocks allows them to get a lot more instacast when there's more than one enemy involved, so even less time spent casting abilities and more time instacasting majority of their spells, allowing Shamans to literally turret Lava Burst back to back at their enemies and cycling between a playstyle of fire, ice, fire, nature kind of instacasty abilities. Outside of pure damage and the movement heavy playstyle, Shamans allow their team to bring in a little bit extra support by being able to purge magical debuffs from enemies. Magical debuffs that would usually make the enemy stronger or let them take less damage. They also provide powerful elementals, like the Earth Elemental, which can take the aggression off of the tank on an enemy group in order to help the tank ease the burden. Or if your tank dies for any reason, you got the safety net giving your healers enough time to res the tank altogether. You also have very good crowd control by having a ranged interrupt that is very similar to that of a melee interrupt in terms of its cooldown. It allows Shamans a lot more active playstyle in interrupting enemy casts. You also have Hex, which polymorphs an enemy for a short moment, AoE Stun that you can bring into dungeons, AoE Slow to slow down the whole enemy team, being able to purge any kind of fear, charm, or sleep effect with Tremor Totem, talenting for a totem that gives you allies extra movement speed, massive AoE burst damage if talented, especially for the Reaping affix adds. Shamans have become a lot more powerful because of all these things in raids as well as dungeons. Outside of Elemental Shaman, Enhancement has some play in pure single target fights when it comes to the brand new raid, and there are some fights where you basically just tunnel into the boss the whole time. While Restoration has been a powerful healer in this current raid meta, being able to spread heal multiple allies in AoE healing, either from Healing Rain or Chain Heal, no matter where their allies may be at. But just because of Elemental Shaman and their new glory, I would have to say that a lot more people have been playing Ellie and is becoming a lot more powerful as of recently. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I do hope you enjoyed. This is my video on all the different classes that are currently exceptionally good as a DPS choice for majority of you. If you play any of these classes, there's a good chance that you guys will get invited into groups. Of course, there's plenty of other classes that I didn't mention that are still great. Paladins are pretty good, monks are pretty good, warriors are great and are necessary in raids, but I'm just trying to give you guys the best classes that are currently right now with the stats included on what is currently popular and what is being played right now in patch 8.1, mostly based on graphs. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know if you're playing any of these classes or are thinking of leveling up any of these classes for this current tier of patch 8.1. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you again so much for watching, and I'll see all of you guys in the next video.